Good morning. My name is Carol Houts. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for Germfree, and I've been in the pharmaceutical industry more than 30 years now, and I decided when I got to 30 I was going to stop counting. So I've been with Germfree about 8 years now, and some of the background and experience I brought to Germfree is I've actually done a lot of work on the clinical and regulatory side of drug development, and we're doing some really creative things along that front. There we go. Okay. So what are the barriers to patient access today? Clinical site availability, we've been finding, is a pretty significant problem when it comes to patient access. We've talked a lot about manufacturing, and Germfree's been intimately involved with trying to get manufacturing sites up and running at clinical research centers. But what we're finding is that there's a significant constraint. I'd say it's almost a chokehold on the industry in the fact that we just don't have enough clinical centers. So I see that as a big constraint as far as how cell and gene therapies actually move forward. Manufacturing capacity, of course. We actually have done some work with some clinical sites that really wanted to start to treat patients with CAR-T, and ultimately what we find out is there's just not enough slots for them to actually treat their patient population still. Affordability remains a significant problem. We know that there are concerns with payer issues, and the high cost of therapy remains as a fundamental issue. And then patient eligibility. I honestly would say that I don't think we've done a good job as an industry in educating patients on the power and the promise of cell and gene therapy. I think we haven't done a good job of really conquering some of the eligibility issues as well. So point-of-care manufacturing is essentially manufacturing at a hospital site or adjacent to the hospital site. So why does point-of-care manufacturing make sense and decentralization? So Germfree's been very involved in developing platforms that are mobile or they're modular and can be placed adjacent to a hospital or based in a regional location, and that allows the manufacturing to be closer to the patient. Some of the benefits of that, reducing some of the transportation issues. There's some operational efficiencies we believe we can gain. There's also some economic impact, some benefits to scalability, and then this really puts together a model that is very patient-centric, and I do think it gives us an opportunity to really innovate on the quality system side of things. So when you talk about regulatory framework, do we have guidance today that exactly speaks to point-of-care manufacturing in the United States? I'd say we don't, but we do have a framework, and I do think we have a strong commitment from FDA to actually give us some guidance on this front. We are expecting a guidance document or something from FDA this year, and hopefully that's still on track. I do think in the UK, the MHRA has done some really forward-thinking things around some of the proposals that they've moved forward. And of course, in the UK, we do have the beginnings of a framework. For EMA, I think we've got a similar approach here. I think they are really working on what happens with QP release when you have a centralized manufacturing site overseeing point-of-care manufacturing. How does that look? And I do think that that framework is evolving. So when you think about regulation in general, I think that ultimately the ICH guidance does give us a significant toolbox when it comes to framing this on a regulatory side. ICH has done a great job with risk management, quality by design. Those are regulations and guidance documents that we can use to help guide the quality system innovation that's required. So here's a little diagram of what point of care can look like in a decentralized way. So you can see on the screen there that you have a central site, and you can see all the quality system aspects that are required for delivering therapies to the market, in essence. Lots of obligations here if you're an IND holder or a BLA holder. And ultimately what you're doing is you're framing this entire quality management system to support what could be manufacturing at the point of care, which might be a hospital, or it might be a regional-based decentralized manufacturing model. And you can imagine in a place like Chicago, for example. Could we put a regional decentralized manufacturing unit in Chicago that might serve several hospitals? So those hospitals and clinicians could have access to CAR T or other cell therapy products. I think that's certainly an option. And if I was a therapeutic developer or an organization that was moving with a decentralized model, I think there would be a combination of sites that would be simply point of care and then sites that would be regionally based. So what do Thank you. So from a decentralized manufacturing perspective and a technology perspective, where do we think we are today? And I'd say that we're at like manufacturing 1.0 when it comes to technology. I think we've got a lot of resources available to us. Tool companies are doing a great job of building out platforms. I do think over the next 3 years, if we make a target of reducing the cost of these therapies, we can get there. And I think over the next 3 years, the cost to patient, we should obligate ourselves, and we have responsibility to this industry to try to reduce cost. Maybe we could land ourselves around $300,000 per patient. And if you look at the future and you look at technology in general, looking at where we might be soon, I hope in the next 3 to 5 years, at a decentralized manufacturing 3.0, and you can start to see fully automated platforms here. I think this is where we really start to get some adoption in some of the tools that are being developed today by many of the companies that are here on this stage. And then ultimately on the stage 4, could advanced therapies be delivered through specialty pharmacy networks or lab networks, or how about our blood supply centers? I think that in order to scale for all the indications that could benefit from cell therapies, I think these are all things we need to consider. So from Germfree's perspective, we've been doing some interesting work when it comes to point-of-care manufacturing. We've partnered with therapeutic developers to advance their programs in that regard. One of the partners that we've worked with is a company called On Demand Pharmaceuticals. This is a group that actually produces small molecules and sterile drugs, really to address drug shortages. So I'll talk a little bit about the work that we've done with them in a moment. On the CGT side, you may have seen some presentations from Caring Cross. We've partnered with them on a number of fronts, and we've also doing some work with Orgenesis, and then we've done some work on the vaccine side when it comes to decentralized manufacturing. So a little bit about a case study. So this is On Demand Pharma. We actually did some work at a little hospital called North Mississippi Medical Center. It is an area where there's some underprivileged, underserved areas. So we think that this was a great candidate for a pilot. You'll see here a mobile unit, and when I say mobile, it means on wheels. So this is a clean room that we've connected with a module in the middle there. And when On Demand Pharma wanted to undertake this, they came to Germfree, and we spent a lot of time building out what the model could be, and you can see us doing some simulations there, and that all advised the design of these units. So we really went forward with a fit-for-purpose model. You can see some pictures here of the inside of the mobile units. You can see some pharmacy technicians actually working, utilizing an MES system, manufacturing execution system. So we worked with On Demand to develop some of this technology, and you can see some of the layout there. So the neat thing that we did with On Demand Pharma is we really started to look at this centralized oversight model. So how do we oversee operations at units that might be around the country operating in a decentralized model? So you can see the central site here it was here in Rockville, Maryland. You can see the team is gathered around a table, and you can see they've got cameras that they can view the operations inside the mobile units. You can see that they've got their MES system up, watching some of the processing that's going on. So this gives them the means of being able to oversee operations. And then you can see that there's a pharmacist that's overseeing operations. And this is a legal requirement for the state. But On Demand Pharma is a 503B organization, so they are working towards establishment licensing, and they're also working under FDA requirements for this. So it does serve as a model for what we'd like to do in cell therapy. So the other case study I have here is, Genesis has a really neat platform based in Madrid. So this is at a children's hospital doing some work in TILs, which is fantastic. They've done, I think, at least 3 patients now. There's a full quality management system in place, and the site is GMP certified. So, and then there's the work that we're doing with Caring Cross, and you may have heard a little bit about this from Boro and his involvement today. Again, this is really working in a decentralized model with centralized oversight, with the idea that you might have regional-based centers and also point-of-care centers. And we're doing some work in Brazil. You may have heard a little bit about this. So in Brazil, one of the troubling things is they have a constitutional mandate to provide the most advanced therapies to their people. And if you want to receive CAR T for cancer or something, you actually have to sue the government. So that's not really a sustainable model for delivering CAR Ts to their population. So they've decided to take this somewhat on their own. So there's been a partnership with Caring Cross and Germfree to start to bring these therapies to Brazil, and we have our first pilot coming. We're actually partnered with Fiocruz, which is like the equivalent of our NIH in Brazil, very resource group, very fantastic on the technical side, so I think we've got really great partners. Once we pilot this in Brazil, we will scale it across the country so that Brazil can take this sort of into their own hands, produce CAR T for their own population. So what have we learned? So we learned an awful lot through our work with on-demand pharma. We've learned that technology can handle a lot of the complexities of a centralized oversight over decentralized manufacturing, whether it's a regional-based unit serving a local capacity need, or it's actually at point of care. Localization is really critical. So how do you install a unit at a hospital near an oncology center in Brazil with all sorts of complexities around that? So really localization is very important. Making sure that the hospital itself is ready clinically to see patients. I think that's a big fundamental piece that we're not always looking at so carefully. Obviously, the technology is really important when it comes to capturing the data required in the manufacturing process, so MES systems are foundational to how we move forward in this space. Process simulations are, of course, very important as you're moving forward to develop your process, because obviously if you're working in a decentralized way at point of care, there are complexities that might be unique to that model in general. The level of monitoring and oversight is extensive, and I can't underestimate that or underscore that enough. So thank you. If you have any questions, I can take those now. I wanted to leave a little time for that. No? All right, thank you so much.